What is up, my friends? Welcome to Flippin' Bats. Really fun episode today. One, all the Hall of Fame stuff has just come out and been announced. Two, Christian Yelich, absolute stud for the Milwaukee Brewers, joining us today to talk a little bit about the wildfires going on in Los Angeles. Obviously, he's from California. I'm going to talk to him about his efforts there and what he's doing. And also this upcoming season, his health. And we're going to talk the Hall of Fame, the guys that got in, the guys that are on the ballot next year, the guys that should have gotten in that didn't, and then some good conversation about Pete Rose. Should he get in? Kurt Schilling and the morality clause of guys getting in or not based on if they're a good person or not, steroid issue, and who gets in next year. We'll talk all of that, but really excited to have Christian Yelich on today, joining us here in literally just a second. But some new news, Jurickson Profar signed to the Braves. Finally, the Braves get on the board with some action this offseason. They have done nothing so far. So really good pickup for the Braves. I feel like Jurickson Profar continues to be undervalued. The dude was a stud last year, a stud for the Padres. Speaking of the Padres, what are you doing at left field? Why wouldn't you go get Jurickson Profar? I don't know. But the Braves and Padres, to me, have been two of the more disappointing teams this offseason for not doing anything. Really good pickup for the Braves going to get Profar. I like that a lot. That'll be a really good addition to their lineup. Braves are going to be good next year. Jurickson Profar to the Atlanta Braves. But fun show today. Hall of Fame stuff coming up a little bit later. But for now, joining us, absolute stud for the Milwaukee Brewers, outfielder Christian Yelich. All right, I am pumped to be joined now by just a stud for the Milwaukee Brewers, Christian Yelich. Christian, thanks so much for hopping on, man. I appreciate it.
You got it, dude. Thanks for having me.
Of course. First off, I know you're a California guy. Just want to make sure everything's okay with you, your family, with these fires out here. It's wild out here. So everything okay with you?
Yeah, I'm all good. My family's all good. Some close calls, but obviously pretty fortunate compared to a lot of people out here. And yeah, man, it's been pretty crazy and a wild few weeks. A lot of sad stuff, and just trying to help out where we can.
For sure. We're gonna talk about that and your partnership with California Strong. And I first want to ask you personally getting ready for this upcoming season. I know you had back surgery in August. You good to go? How's things looking for spring training? How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm all good. Just progressing through my rehab, doing that whole stuff, but feel good. Just doing the usual ramp up into spring training, and
Good.
then we'll kind of just go from there once we get there and feel it out. But definitely feeling good.
We love that. We
Yeah.
love that. So I want to ask you in 2018 with Ryan Braun and Mike Moustakas started California Strong.
Mhm.
And I know I mentioned everything going on out here. I live in Los Angeles. And you with California Strong have partnered with Easton and Rawlings to really help out with everything going on. So I'll let you explain what you're currently doing and how you're helping out with things.
Yeah. So yeah, me, myself, Bronny, Moose, Mike Attanasio, who's his family owns the Brewers, and Jared Goff kind of partnered together in 2018 and started California Strong. At that time, it was just to help out with the Woolsey fire, which is another a bad one that happened out here.
Okay.
Like I guess it's 7 years now, which is crazy. But so now this one, we're kind of partnered with Easton and Rawlings to just try to help, get people back on their feet who, lost their facilities, lost their gear, their baseball gear, baseball and softball players that, lost their stuff in the fires. Because like, as you saw, and as you know, like they come through and they rip through that area pretty fast, and you only have so much time to grab stuff. If you have time to really get anything, if you're not home, then
Yeah.
you don't really have a chance to get anything. So,
And you're really not grabbing baseball stuff.
yeah. And baseball stuff's probably not super high on the list of things to grab if you only have so much stuff to carry. So a lot of kids lost all their gear, and a lot of them lost their facilities and in places they played little league and softball and all that stuff. So we partnered with Rawlings and Easton to try and just help raise some money. It's obviously not going to be anywhere near enough to get everything back, but just small gestures and just to be able to help some people out or give a little bit to a lot of people, is huge. And that's kind of been our goal with this year, and just try to help out a little, do what we can. It's just little gestures to show people that, like, we support them and we understand that, it's a tough time. This is really sad what's gone on out here last few weeks.
For sure. And I know a lot of people, from things I've heard around here, people that listen or watch the show have always wondered how they could help or where to look to help. How can people help with what you're currently doing with California Strong and Easton and Rawlings? If somebody's listening or watching right now, how can they directly help what you're doing?
Yeah, if you go to californiastrong.org, and the cool thing about it is we're partnered with the YMCA. So, they kind of vet, make sure everything's like legit on, people looking for, money or help. And it allows us to give, all the money to them, instead of just like you do a GoFundMe or something. People, they take like a portion of what you donate, so californiastrong.org is, the website kind of has all the info there where you can donate, kind of see the different causes and stuff like that. So they do some great stuff, man. And obviously it wouldn't be possible without the YMCA. They've helped us out a ton, and kind of learned a lot about the charity components here over the last few years. And unfortunately, these wildfires kind of keep popping up, so if people can donate or help out what they can, it's obviously greatly appreciated. If you can't, that's cool too. It's just kind of more about bringing awareness to the whole deal, and just getting it out there.
Yeah, it's insane, man. Well, it's really cool what you're doing. Again, I know you're Thousand Oaks guy. You're from out here. I want to transition to baseball a little bit. And I mean, we'll stick in Los Angeles because I feel like, with what the Dodgers are doing out here, it's a big talking point amongst a lot of people, and players have spoken out about it, and just the deferred money and everything there. How do you feel about this? I know any team can do it, but when you're sitting back watching what the Dodgers are doing in the front office, are you thinking, man, I wish every team would do this? Or are you thinking, man, we need to figure this out?
No, I mean, look, they won the World Series last year. They're going for it again. Obviously, they got better. It looks like from last year. And if you're a fan of the team or you're on the team, you're obviously super excited about it. And it's cool that their front office, their ownership group, like, supports their team and wants to be like the best version that they can be throughout the year. Like, obviously you don't know what's going to happen over the course of a baseball season, but on paper, they obviously look really good. They've got some super talented players, like all-stars and Hall of Famers up and down the roster, basically every position. So, they're deep, they're very talented, but you never know what can happen. It's gonna, you still got to play the games, you still got to win the games, and but yeah, I mean, they're a great team on paper for sure.
I was wondering this last year when watching you guys, y'all had a really good year. I don't know if at the beginning of the year people expected you guys to be as good as you were. Ended up a force and played well into October. You were having a really good year. And I was watching, obviously, in MVP conversations a few years ago, and then last year, kind of back to that form, and swing looked great and a little bit different. So I was wondering, when watching you, did you last offseason work on your swing? Obviously, you worked on your swing, but what did you focus on last offseason to get back to where you were? I mean, you were killing it last year before the injury.
Yeah, I mean, I played around with a lot of stuff in the season before that. I think in 2023, started loading a little different, toe tap, trying to just control my body, get my body to work how I wanted it to, and obviously kind of figured out why that was the case halfway through last year, had to get some stuff cleaned up and do that whole deal. But I was just trying to get like a good place to hit, like, consistently, with timing wise, and just be in a good hitting position as consistently and as often as I could. And like, there's a lot of ways to go about it. Some guys leg kick, some guys tap, like, but everyone kind of gets to the same spot when they hit at some point. And like, I was like, I just want to be able to do this like consistently and be in a good spot as often as I can. And like, if I can do that, like, I know I can still be successful. I just wasn't getting to that spot in previous years, or I was doing it, but not as often as I needed to, or inconsistent. So It's like I just need to figure out how I can do this.
And
Like,
the toe tap helped.
yeah, just like smaller moves and like be able to control your body a little bit better.
Yeah.
Just be on time and be in a good position to hit like as consistent as possible. Like obviously that sounds super easy, but it's not.
It's not,
Anybody
no.
that's played baseball like knows like that's hard to do, but
Yeah.
you try to make it as easy on yourself as you can, and like there's no one way to hit. Like everyone's got to be in like certain positions at certain times and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But like how you get there, like it doesn't really matter. So
Yeah.
I was like, I can, I hit with the leg kick for a really long time, and then I was like, well, I bet you I could do this a different way, and
Yeah.
played around with it. And doing it during the season is probably not recommended. It's a little risky, but I was like, I'm going to do this. And I think in hitting, like anytime you do anything in hitting, like you gotta be committed to it. You don't want to be like half in, half out, because then like you never really go anywhere. Because then you're like, well, I'll just go back to what I was doing. It's like once you make a change in hitting, it's like you have to be convicted in that change and put everything you have into like making that the best version it can be, because it gives you mental freedom, and then you actually like make progress at it.
Yeah.
If you're not really committed to it, it's not good.
I was half-assed with a lot of changes in the minor leagues, and when you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to hit 100 with 90-mile-an-hour sliders, that's why I'm sitting here right now.
Yeah.
If you can't commit to something, you're gonna screw yourself, and that's
Yeah, it's
hitting's
a hard
hard.
thing. It's a hard thing to do, man. It's really hard. Some guys make it look easy, but it's a really hard thing, and we gotta just make it as easy on ourselves as possible.
For
Just
sure.
like dumb it down in like its simplest form, and like that's always been like my thing about hitting is like, what are you trying to accomplish? Like each person is different. What their thoughts are and their feels are all different. Like what I think about is different than what you think about, but like
Yeah.
as a hitter, you should think about like, all right, what's my goal? Like, what do I want to do? Like, what position do I want to be in? It's like, okay, I want to do that. It's like, cool. How am I going to get there as consistently as possible? And then that's how you like build a swing, and
Yeah.
each person like builds their swing different, right? But you have to have goals and objectives and like sit down and think about it, and not just like mindlessly swing, because then you don't get anywhere. You have to have a plan. And that's kind of that's
Did
the
you ever
speech. But
no, I mean I could dive in and talk about hitting all day long because it's fascinating to me, the mindset. We could talk to 10 minor leaguers, ex minor leaguers, 10 big leaguers, and everybody would say a different thing, and everybody does it differently, including a former manager of yours at this point. But you ever think about one time just going up there to hit like Craig Counsell and twirl yourself all up and try and figure it out that way?
No, I asked him why he did that one time. I was like, how did we get to that? Take me through like that thought process. And he's like, well, I was just like kind of bouncing around and like trying to, find ways to get a hit. And I was like, I need to do something drastic. Is what he says. So he's like, I just went with that. That's what he said about it when he was still our manager. But Counsell's a great dude, man. He was fun to play with. But yeah, it's like everybody has their own thing, and
yeah,
you're constantly adjusting as a hitter. Like you're not ever the same. Like you're constantly evolving, making tweaks, making adjustments, because the longer you play, like the higher levels you go up, like you always have to adjust. And the guys that are great at adjusting are the ones that stick around for a long time, and then guys that don't. So that's how it goes.
I hear that.
That's how it goes.
You're an outfielder. Hall of Fame voting just took place. I got to ask you, because I get fired up about this every year. How is Andruw Jones not a Hall of Famer?
I don't know, man. Sometimes like that voting process makes a lot of sense, and then sometimes it doesn't make any sense. I don't know. I don't know. Like I don't know what goes into it, or people obviously have their reasons for why they vote for some guys and why they don't vote for others. So I don't really know. That one's probably a pretty confusing one, because you would think the resume is there and like what he accomplished was pretty special, but I don't know. I mean, hopefully it happens one day. I think it probably will. But
I agree.
Yeah, it was cool to see Ichiro get in there. Being able to play with him for a few years was awesome. We all knew he was going to be a Hall of Famer, but once it's official, it's still pretty cool. But yeah, man, what a legend.
Yeah, absolute legend. I was gonna say when people talk Ichiro, and if anybody were to say Name a teammate of Ichiro Suzuki. I know Christian Yelich doesn't come to top of mind to many people, but you guys did play together for a little while down there in
Yeah.
Miami. I need I need your best that you can tell Ichiro story that comes to mind. The dude's seemingly hysterical.
Yeah, I mean, he was an awesome teammate. He really would like he'd interact with the guys and was one of the boys throughout the whole season.
Yeah.
And like when you first see that you're going to play with Ichiro, like obviously when someone like that comes into a team, everyone's kind of like, well, how's it going to be? Like there's certain guys that you play with, especially when like you're a young player where like it's just different,
Yeah.
where it's like, someone's going to be a Hall of Famer. You like grew up watching them. Like we all grew up watching Ichiro down
Yeah.
there with the Mariners. So like you're about to be his teammate. You're like, oh wow, how's this going to be? But it was awesome. He was super cool. And like I learned a lot from him as far as like how routine oriented he was. Like he was playing. He played a lot with us, but he didn't play like every day. But he
Yeah.
still did like the same thing every day, like the same routine, same times. Like the way he carried himself, like never took off days. Like even when like the team had an off day or like you travel or something, he would still goes into the field, throws, hits, runs with his guy Allen, who's with him. But yeah, it was awesome, man. And just like seeing him get 3,000 hits and just being there, like at that point in his career, like every time he scored a run or got a hit, he was passing like somebody like that's a legend in baseball, So it was cool to like watch all those milestones and just like be around him for all that, and see somebody who's done it at that level for like that long and kind of pick his brain about just baseball and hitting and kind of how he went about it was really cool.
That's so cool for you to be able to. I mean, we all grew up like you're imitating certain swings in the backyard. Gary Sheffield's one from the right side, and from the left is Ichiro and doing the shoulder thing, and then you get to
Yeah.
play with him like after all that.
Yeah.
That's
We had
gotta
some
be
cool guys on that team, man. Like, it kind of flies under the radar, like you said, but like there's some cool like people around in those Miami days. Like Barry was the hitting coach at
Yeah.
one point. Donnie Mattingly was the manager. He had Ichiro, Stanton, like, Real Muto, Ozuna, like just like all these guys that were great players, went on to be great players, or some Hall of Famers, which that's pretty cool. Like it doesn't happen like a lot of places, besides like the Dodgers now, but there's a lot of cool guys down there, and it was fun like learning from all of those guys as like a young player, and getting to watch them and talk to Barry about hitting, or Donnie, or Ichiro, or really whoever. And like I learned a lot there early in my career.
Yeah. Barry Bonds, greatest hitter of all time?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
like if you've played the game, like you just like all the other stuff kind of like aside, you still know like that was unbelievable.
He's the greatest hitter.
Yeah, and if you like know like a swing and hitting, and like you can see like for yourself of like,
yeah,
oh yeah, this is like this super high level stuff, that he's doing. And like if you go like, I know baseball guys get bored all the time, like they'll look at Barry's stats for like from those like peak years. this is even real life, You couldn't go back to high school and do that, and he was doing that in the big leagues.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Like 1,400 OPSs and stuff like that. Whereas this looks fake, dude. 600 on base percentages and stuff like that. We're like, this isn't, guys can't even do that for a week. He's doing it for years.
Exactly.
Crazy,
I completely agree. Christian, thanks so much for hopping on, man. And the important stuff is what you're doing out here with California Strong, with Easton and Rawlings for the Fire. So thanks for hopping on and talking that and talking some baseball. Big fan of yours on the field, and now big fan of yours off, man. Really appreciate you hopping on.
Yeah, I appreciate it, dude. I know we kind of been meaning to do this for like a few years. Just never really lined it up and stuff like that. So I'm glad we finally.
All it takes is a fire.
Yeah, I'm glad we finally got to do it, man. Obviously wish it was under better circumstances, but yeah, appreciate you bringing awareness to the cause, and it's always good talking baseball. So I'm sure I'll see you around, and yeah, thanks again for having me, dude.
Of course, sounds good, man. Good luck this year.
All right, dude, I appreciate it.
All right, just wanted to thank Christian Yelich for joining us here on Flippin' Bats. Really appreciate that, and a good convo with him. And it does make me think about the Hall of Fame and the Hall of Fame voting that just took place, and my thoughts on it. I did get some good fan questions as well, so Let's talk about everything that just happened with the Hall of Fame. Obviously, the three guys that did get in, congratulations to Ichiro, CC Sabathia, and Billy Wagner. There are some guys that did not get in that I am very, very passionate about. And then some good questions that we'll talk through as well, which is should Pete Rose be in the Hall of Fame? Feels like it comes up every year, and it should, but it is a good question. Kurt Schilling and the morality clause. Should we trash the morality clause and get guys like that in? Yes or no? Will the baseball writers ever get past the steroid issue? And who gets in next year? But first off, congrats to those three guys that did get in. Again, Ichiro, CC Sabathia, and Billy Wagner. Let's start with Billy Wagner. Finally, Billy Wagner is a Hall of Famer now. He has been for the last couple of years. It's just a great story. No matter what part of the story you look at, how when he was a kid, he threw right-handed, he broke his right arm, he learned to throw left-handed. Next thing you know, he's throwing 100 miles an hour, a big league all-star, and now a big league Hall of Famer. And just a great story in terms of finally getting into the Hall of Fame. He did cut his career shorter than he could have because he wanted to spend time with his children. And I do think that ultimately cost him the first many years of him being on the ballot and not getting in because he didn't have necessarily those save numbers. Every other number's there. But the longevity numbers were a little shorter than what they could have been because he cut his career short. But I love that he finally got in. The video of him getting the call and just breaking down into tears and saying it's a dream. I am so excited for Billy Wagner, Hall of Famer, Virginia guy. Funny story about that, by the way. So every year for FanDuel, or last year for FanDuel, was doing the MLB.TV Game of the Week with Eric Hosmer, Johnny Gomes, those guys, and we would have guests on every week. Well, Billy Wagner was one of those guests one week. And I realized last year after I tweet about him being in the Hall of Fame and he should be a Hall of Famer every year. Well, last year I was tweeting about it and I went to tag him and his name wasn't showing up. So I tried to figure out why and ultimately realized that I was blocked on Twitter by Billy Wagner. And all I've ever done on Twitter to Billy Wagner is clamor into the abyss that he's a Hall of Famer and it's ridiculous that he's not. Well, he came on the FanDuel show and I asked him, I said, Billy, what? I gotta ask you before you go. I'm blocked on Twitter by you. Why? And he just laughed and said he has no idea how to work Twitter. He has no idea how to block somebody or unblock somebody, and he's going to get his son to do it. And now I am unblocked, and he follows me, and I'm pumped that he's in the Hall of Fame. So congrats to Billy Wagner for getting in. Another one, CC Sabathia. CC gets in, first ballot Hall of Famer, 19th left-handed pitcher in history to get inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Just a stud. I mean, one of only three left-handed pitchers in the 3,000 strikeout club. He had a 5-year stretch where he led all of baseball in strikeouts, which only 5 other pitchers have done that. Max Scherzer, Clayton Kershaw, Roy Halladay, Johan Santana, and Greg Maddux. One of 15 pitchers in history with 250 plus wins and 3,000 or more strikeouts. Obviously a postseason legend. New York Yankees last World Series, 2009. I don't think they win it without CC Sabathia. ALCS MVP through 36 and a third innings, 1.98 ERA in that postseason. Just absolutely insane. So much deserved to CC Sabathia. Cool story about CC Sabathia as well. He thanked Harold Reynolds for even getting into the Hall of Fame. And actually, he was tweeting about this, but said after the 2017 season, he was ready to retire. And Harold Reynolds is the one that kind of told him, look, you got to push for the Hall of Fame here. You're on the cusp. You're borderline, but numbers matter. And Harold told him to keep going and ended up finishing with 251 wins in his career and 3,093 strikeouts. He pitched 2 more seasons. He was not at either of those numbers. He got to both of those milestones because Harold Reynolds told him to keep going. And he really gave a lot of credit to Harold for getting into the Hall of Fame. So really cool there. Lastly, Ichiro. I am fired up about Ichiro. One, Congratulations to Ichiro, the first ever Asian player to be inducted into the National Baseball Hall of Fame. He received all but one vote to get into the Hall of Fame. How is this man not a unanimous Hall of Famer? Let me just read you some things. And then put yourself in a voter's position and tell me how you can be someone that has a vote and doesn't vote for Ichiro. And I know people will say, it doesn't matter. He's a Hall of Famer. It all looks the same. The plaques aren't different, but it does matter. For me, for the integrity of the voters, it makes voters look bad because somebody had a vote and didn't vote for a guy that had 3,089 Major League Baseball hits. Before that, he had 1,278 career hits in Japan in NPB, which if you're good at math, I can tell you is 4,367 total hits. Do you know why that number is important? Because Pete Rose, the all-time hit king, the all-time hits leader in Major League Baseball history, had 4,256. And I know you can't say, well, if you add those two or if he did that in Major League Baseball, it is different. But it's just to put it in perspective. If you add those up, his hits in Japan and his hits in Major League Baseball, he had more hits all time than Pete Rose, the all-time hits leader. He won a Gold Glove and he was an All-Star in 10 consecutive seasons. 2001 Rookie of the Year and MVP in the same year. The accolades go on and on and on. When you talk about best arm for an outfielder in history, you can't have that conversation without talking about Ichiro. He was iconic. Whenever you're doing swings in the backyard growing up or imitating people's swings, you do a couple different ones, right? You do Gary Sheffield. You do Craig Counsell. You do, I don't know, Jeff Bagwell. And then you do Ichiro, and you do the arm sleeve pull. You do holding the bat out. You do running out of the box. He was an icon, and there's not a world in which you have a vote and you don't vote for him. It quite frankly pisses me off. The only reason that I could see anyone even doing that is because everyone's going to say, who was the one writer that didn't vote for him? And then they come out with an article because they want everybody to read their article. That hasn't been done yet, but it wouldn't surprise me. I don't get it. How is he not a first ballot Hall of Famer? I don't know. I don't want to dwell on that because this is celebratory of Ichiro and the player he is, the player he was, the person he is. He's hysterical. By the way, when he was doing his the day after when he was up on stage and talking about the Hall of Fame and getting interviewed, in his interview, he said, there was one writer that didn't vote for me. I would like to invite him over to my house, have a drink together, and we will have a good chat. I love Ichiro. Congratulations to him for being a Hall of Famer, first ballot Hall of Famer, should be unanimous Hall of Famer, first Asian player ever in the National Baseball Hall of Fame out of Japan. Good for him. Absolutely incredible for Ichiro Suzuki. So those are the three guys that did get in. Let's talk Andruw Jones. I do it every year. Tired of talking about it because this man's a Hall of Famer. And it's ridiculous that he's not. I don't even know where to begin with this guy. With the accolades that I gave to Ichiro and how I don't understand how he wasn't unanimous, I'm going to do the same thing to Andruw Jones, and you tell me how this man's not a Hall of Famer. Seriously, every single one of you listening, because I know there's people, and I think a lot of people look at his Yankees tenure at the end of his career, and that leads back to the question of, can you play yourself out of the Hall of Fame? And I think example A of that for right now is Andruw Jones, because this man's absolutely a Hall of Famer. So everyone listening or watching that's on the cusp with Andruw Jones, let me present you these. Any single person that is on the cusp of whether or not Andruw Jones is a Hall of Famer, listen here and listen closely. Seasons with at least 25 home runs and 25 defensive runs saved as a center fielder. Okay? Andruw Jones has 4. The other 23,369 players in the history of baseball combined have 2. Andruw Jones has 4 seasons with at least 25 homers and 25 defensive runs saved as a center fielder. He played 15 years, 10 gold gloves, 400 homers, 1,300 RBIs. Most career seasons with at least 150 games played in center field and 25 homers hit. Let me read you that list. Willie Mays did it 10 times. Andruw Jones, 10 times. Nobody else even has 5 or more. It's just Andruw Jones and Willie Mays. Players with 400 plus homers and 10 plus gold gloves. Ken Griffey Jr., Willie Mays, Mike Schmidt, and Andruw Jones. He was the best defensive center fielder of all time, and it's an absolute joke that Andruw Jones isn't in the Hall of Fame yet. How has it not happened? I don't know. An incredible combination of power and just the best defensive center fielder you will ever watch play out there. It was remarkable. I grew up a Braves fan. I grew up wearing number 25 because of Andruw Jones. That man's a Hall of Famer. Come on. It gets more and more ridiculous every single year. So, those are the 3 that got in. That's the one guy that I really think should be in. I did want to talk the 2026 ballot. The guys that will be coming on it for the first time next year, because this class ain't the best, my friends. Some of the notable first time on the Hall of Fame ballot next year will be Ryan Braun, Cole Hamels, Matt Kemp, Howie Kendrick, Shin-Soo Choo, Edwin Encarnacion, Alex Gordon. All I'm going to say is I don't think any of those guys ever going to. None of them. I mean, we can talk. We can at least have a conversation about Cole Hamels, but I don't see that happening. Ryan Braun obviously caught up in the juice conversation. So I don't see anybody coming on the ballot next year that will ultimately end up getting into the Hall of Fame. But what it does mean, and the reason I wanted to talk about the 2026 ballot is because next year will be a big year for guys that are already on the ballot that are trying to get over that hump. So I bark up a tree for years at this point about Andruw Jones. I think Andruw Jones gets into the Hall of Fame next year. I think next year is the year it happens. He got 66.2% of the vote this past year. So I do ultimately think he ends up getting in next year. But that's the big talking point next year. None of those guys are 100%. None of those guys are getting in next year. Most of those guys are going to be off the ballot after 1 year, and I don't think any of the guys coming on the ballot next year ultimately end up getting in. But I do think it's beneficial for a guy like Andruw Jones, who I ultimately think gets in next year. Got some good fan questions today, so we're going to run through a couple of these. Hall of Fame brings up a bunch of good questions. Obviously, Pete Rose comes into play. The steroids come into play. And we're also going to talk who gets in next year. So the first question comes from JC, which is Pete Rose, Hall of Fame or no? And I very much so feel like I am in the minority here. To me, this isn't a question that can really be answered like the other guys, like the steroid guys, because Pete Rose is banned for life from baseball. Until he isn't banned for life, we can't even have that conversation because he's not a guy that's even on the ballot for people to potentially vote for. We can't even have the conversation of should we or shouldn't we vote for Pete Rose because he bet on baseball. Right? So he's banned for life, which until somebody comes along, a commissioner comes along that says, I am going to let Pete Rose back into the baseball world essentially that'll be then you'll be able to have the conversation of should he be a Hall of Famer? Yes or no? He's obviously the all-time hit king, one of the greatest of all time. There's some morality questions with him. But my thoughts here are in the minority because he's banned for life. So you can't vote. You can't vote him in. It's a different conversation altogether. So right now, should he be a Hall of Famer, yes or no? The answer is no, because he's banned for life. And I can't disagree. I can't disagree with that banning. Obviously, gambling is becoming more of a part of sports, but it doesn't mean I agree on a player betting on that sport that he plays, even if he was betting on his own team to win. It ain't right, and he's currently banned. Good question, though, JC. Thank you. Next question comes from Jeff Bates. Curt Schilling and the morality clause. Trash it, yes or no? So what he's saying is essentially Curt Schilling's at the forefront of this, but there is a morality clause when it comes to getting in. Baseball writers are voting for or against players because of maybe what they've done off the field. Curt Schilling is a prime example of that. Curt Schilling is not a good human being. Curt Schilling has, I don't know, Google it if you don't know. He's threatened people. He's a bad guy. So he's not getting into the Hall of Fame because of that. He's threatened baseball writers. He's been awful to baseball writers, and they're not voting for him. Again, maybe my thoughts here are in the minority. I've said this time and time again. I think a lot of the steroids guys should get in. I think Barry Bonds is the greatest hitter of all time and should be in the Hall of Fame. So there's a whole morality conversation there, right? So this one is tough for me because Curt Schilling isn't a good dude. But I can't sit here and say that one thing isn't bad enough to not get you into the Hall of Fame, but another is. If getting into the Hall of Fame should be about the numbers you put onto a piece of paper, and that your name is on the list in front of me. I can look at your numbers and say that guy's a Hall of Famer or not, right? And with Curt Schilling, it's just tricky, but he is a Hall of Fame pitcher, right? The numbers say yes, he is in the Hall of Fame. So it gets to a tricky point where these baseball writers are essentially becoming the gatekeepers of the Hall of Fame. And they've transformed this voting into their own sort of morality thing. Well, we ain't voting for Curt Schilling because he's not a good dude. Of course he's not a good dude. But if we're going to go back all time in history and talk about everybody that's in the Hall of Fame from the Babe Ruth era, are we really going to say all those people are good guys? Absolutely not. But now these baseball writers have taken it upon themselves, when there's no rule anywhere, to say you are not getting in the Hall of Fame if you took steroids, and you are not getting in the Hall of Fame if you are a bad enough person. And that's just a tricky road, because where is the line? Where's the line? Curt Schilling, bad dude. Threatened, again, Google it. Curt Schilling, bad dude. Omar Vizquel's not getting in and basically falling towards the bottom of the ballot because of his own sort of stuff. But where's the line? Let's say, I don't know, and anybody else on the list, if they ended up with a traffic ticket, or let's say a DUI at some point, or jaywalking. Where is the line for whether somebody is too bad of a person off the field to get into the Hall of Fame? I disagree with that. If you're a Hall of Fame baseball player and your numbers prove it on the field, I think you deserve to get into the museum that honors the best baseball players of all time. I don't go to Cooperstown, New York to look at plaques of the greatest human beings that played baseball. I go to Cooperstown to look at the players that are recognized as the greatest to ever do it. And it does become a tricky conversation with some players But I do think we got to get away from not voting for people because of what they've done off the field or what they've said to baseball writers or what they've said to people. But a really good question, a really good conversation, and I truly don't know how most people feel about what I just said. Maybe I'm in the minority, maybe I'm not. But it's a tricky conversation. Next up comes from Christian Anderson. Will the baseball writers ever get past the steroid issue for Clemens, Bonds, etc.? One, a lot, Bonds now his years are up on the ballot, but obviously he can still get in via the Veterans Committee and all of that later on. But I think just in general, the steroid conversation. I'm going to say yes. And that's because I think people more my generation, and maybe I'm a baseball writer one day that has a vote. But people my generation that will have a vote, or people my generation that end up pushing their way through and others get pushed out. I think my generation thinks differently than that generation. And it's not to say that I agree with Barry Bonds taking steroids or that I think he should get a free pass for taking them. I think he cheated. But I think one, he had a Hall of Fame career before he was ever linked to steroids. I also think he's the greatest hitter of all time. So I do think baseball writers eventually get past the steroid issue, but it ain't right now. I know Barry Bonds got closer and closer. I know A-Rod's a tricky conversation. He's around the 30-some% mark in terms of voting, so he's not exactly trending to get there. But I think as the older generation pushes out and the younger generation pushes into the baseball writers, I would say they get more and more past the steroid issue. And maybe some of those guys, and specifically the ones you mentioned, Clemens and Bonds, I think they're at the forefront on each side, right? I'm not saying anybody that was on the cusp that took steroids, no. But like Barry Bonds is the greatest hitter of all time. Roger Clemens is one of the best pitchers of all time. I do believe they should be in the Hall of Fame. Again, the Hall of Fame is a museum of the greatest baseball players to ever do it. And what I have gone on and on about over the last few years is that I think the Hall of Fame should have a steroid era wing. There should be a place that acknowledges those players that get voted in that may or may not have been linked to steroids or tested positive for steroids that says, steroid era of baseball. One, thank you. It saved baseball. Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, thank you for doing that. It wasn't banned at the time, but we had to make it illegal because it was cheating. But two, these guys took steroids, performance-enhancing drugs, but we did want to acknowledge them as some of the best baseball players to ever live. And here they are in this little wing here in the museum. I don't know. Anyway, thanks for that question. Yes, I do think writers eventually get past it. And lastly comes from V Twins. Who gets in the Hall of Fame next year? I think two people get in. Carlos Beltran, who got 70.3%. Again, you need 75%. Carlos Beltran gets in next year. Carlos Beltran is the first of the Astros scandal to end up on the Hall of Fame ballot. He's also the ringleader, seemingly, of that whole scandal. Brought it over from the Yankees to the Astros. Look, if you disagree with me, just read about it. He was with the Yankees. They've acknowledged that they were doing something. And then Beltran goes to the Astros, and then he implements that there. Regardless, Carlos Beltran didn't get in, I don't think. Because of that scandal, it's going to cost him being a first ballot Hall of Famer. But if this tells you anything, I don't think the ringleaders or the guys that are at the forefront of the Astros cheating scandal in 2017 are going to be held out of the Hall of Fame. Carlos Beltran is at 70.3% in his first year on the ballot. And I think ultimately gets in next year when it is a weaker class coming in. I also, as I said, do think Andruw Jones gets in. His last year on the ballot will be 2027. Would be 2027, but I think in 2026 he gets in. He had 66.2% of the votes this year. That is unfathomable to me. He is a Hall of Famer. He gets in next year. Those are my two, Carlos Beltran and Andruw Jones. Some others close. Chase Utley, not even close. Chase Utley is the next closest at 39.8%. There's a whole conversation there. Does he get in? There's a whole second base conversation as well. Should second baseman be held to a different standard because they're just not getting there? And then A-Rod. A-Rod's at 37.1%. Manny Ramirez, 34.3%. Andy Pettitte, 27.9%. It'll be interesting what happens to A-Rod. A-Rod's last year on the ballot is 2031. I do expect a good bump from him next year with the way the ballot's shaping out. So that'll be an interesting one for sure. But my answer is two. I think those two guys get in the ballot or get into the Hall of Fame next year. Fun show, fun conversation. First off, thank you to Christian Yelich for hopping on the show and for talking about everything happening out here in California and just for talking about this upcoming season and also this Hall of Fame conversation. A lot of fun. Again, congrats to Ichiro, Sabathia, and Billy Wagner. Thank you all for listening and watching. As always, make sure you're subscribed. Please, wherever you listen to your podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever, subscribe, hit that follow button. Leave a 5-star review if you want. If you have time, it does really, really help. And if you're watching, you can watch every episode we do on YouTube at Flippin' Bats Pod there on our YouTube channel there. Leave a comment, like it. I always hop in the comments and love talking to you guys. We're also on all social media, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, everywhere at Flippin' Bats Pod. So give us a follow there. Really appreciate you all. 2025, the year of Flippin' Bats. I keep saying it, but I am so excited for this year. I love this community. I love you guys that listen. You all mean the world to me. Remember, my friends, today's a great day for the Detroit Tigers to sign Alex Bregman. 2, find your bat and flip it. Until next time, guys.